Kwame Mensah unlocked the door to his Mensah Heights penthouse, expecting calm, the hum of the city below, the soft buzz of the air conditioning, and his usual quiet retreat from the chaos of a Kunnel city. Instead, the moment the door clicked shut behind him, a hand clamped tightly over his mouth. Kwame froze instantly, his body tensing like a spring. His heart pounded as adrenaline surged, and for a split second, he thought he was being attacked. Before he could react, a trembling voice whispered close to his ear. "Please, don't make a sound." A woman's voice. Soft, urgent, familiar. He turned sharply and froze. "Ella!" There she stood, Ella Ba, the young maid the agency had sent just 2 weeks ago. Normally quiet, almost invisible, always tucked away in her crisp black uniform and white apron. But tonight, her usual calm had shattered. Her wide brown eyes were red, glistening, frantic. Kwame's voice was low, sharp. "What the hell are you doing in my house this late?" "Please," she whispered again, her voice low but firm. "Don't raise your voice." "Why not?" Ella's lips trembled before she finally spoke. "Because Kobby is sleepwalking, and if you wake him the wrong way, you could lose him." For a moment, Kwame thought he misheard. "My son?" "Yes." She glanced nervously down the hallway, where dim corridor lights spilled faintly across polished marble. "It happens every night. Around this time. I've been staying back to guide him. Tonight, he almost reached the stairs." The words sank like cold water into Kwame's chest. Kobby, his little boy, 7 years old, gentle, quiet, innocent, wandering alone at night, and he hadn't known. "No one told me?" His voice cracked slightly. "No one else noticed," Ella replied softly, wringing her hands. "I stayed after my shift. I couldn't leave him like that." Kwame stared at her, conflicted. "You're not paid for that." "I know." Her calmness hit harder than any accusation could. Before he could respond, soft footsteps padded faintly from the hallway. Both turned sharply. At the far end, a small barefoot figure emerged, shuffling slowly, eyes half closed. "Daddy!" The voice was tiny, fragile. Kwame's chest tightened. "Kobby!" Ella raised a hand quickly. "Don't startle him. Walk slowly." Kwame crouched, opening his arms. "Come here, son." The boy drifted forward, silent, and melted into his father's embrace, small arms clinging tightly around his neck. "I was looking for you," Kobby murmured softly. Kwame shut his eyes, holding him close. "I'm here now," he whispered, and for the first time in a long time, he meant it. The next day, morning came, but peace didn't. The sun rose lazily over a Kunnel city, spilling gold through the penthouse's glass walls, but the tension inside Mensah Heights was thick enough to choke on. Kwame Mensah sat at the dining table, a half-empty cup of coffee cooling by his hand, his untouched toast wilting on the plate. Across the room, Ella Ba moved silently, folding napkins, rearranging utensils, her eyes fixed firmly on her work, avoiding his. He watched her carefully. Too carefully. "Kobby talks in his sleep," Kwame said finally, his voice low, controlled. Ella's hands paused mid-fold, just for a moment. "Sometimes," she answered softly without looking up. Last night, Kwame continued, watching her closely, he called a name. "Kojo." He leaned forward, voice edged with suspicion. "Who is that?" For a split second, Ella's face betrayed her. A flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? Pain? Then it was gone, masked beneath calm composure. I don't know," she said, forcing steady breath. "Maybe a school friend." Kwame studied her silently, his jaw tightening. He didn't believe her. Not entirely. Later that afternoon, Kobby came skipping into the living room, carrying a piece of paper covered in bright crayon marks. "Daddy," he said, breathless with pride. "Look, I drew us." Kwame knelt down, forcing a smile. "Let me see, champ." On the page, 3 stick figures stood under a crooked sun. One small figure with a big smile. Kobby. One taller figure holding his hand. A woman. And another man beside them, drawn slightly bigger than Kwame's stick figure. Kwame frowned, pointing to the third figure. "Who's this?" Kobby smiled innocently and whispered, "Kojo." That night, Kwame couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, the city lights glittering far below, his chest tight with a growing unease. Who is Kojo? Why would his son, barely 7 years old, call out to a man he'd never met? Why did Ella flinch whenever the name was mentioned? Something was wrong. Something big. And then came the worst thought of all. A thought he tried to push away, but couldn't. What if Kobby isn't my son? The next morning, Kwame made a decision. After breakfast, when Kobby had left for school and Ella was busy in the kitchen, Kwame quietly entered his son's room. His hands shook as he carefully plucked a few strands of Kobby's hair from his pillow and sealed them inside an envelope. He called his private doctor, lowering his voice. "Dr. Okoro, I need a DNA test." Quietly, discreetly. "Understood," the doctor said on the other end. "When do you want the results?" "As soon as possible." For the next few days, Kwame couldn't stop watching Ella. Every gesture, every glance, every word. And the more he watched, the stranger things seemed. When Kobby fell and scraped his knee, it was Ella he ran to, not him. She knew his bedtime routine better than anyone else. And once, late at night, Kwame caught her sitting on the edge of Kobby's bed, humming a lullaby softly. It wasn't just any lullaby. It was his late wife's lullaby. The one only family knew. He stepped back quietly, heart pounding, retreating before she saw him. That night, he sat alone in his study, fingers tapping against his whiskey glass. Who are you, Ella? Was she hiding something? Or had his paranoia finally consumed him? 3 days later, the penthouse grew colder, heavier. Kobby started sleepwalking more frequently. Always around midnight. Always pacing. Always whispering the same name. Kojo. 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 Kwame watched him one night, standing quietly in the hallway, hidden behind the shadows. Ella walked slowly behind Kobby, guiding him like she'd done this before. She didn't notice Kwame watching. When Kobby stopped at the top of the stairs, Ella knelt and gently touched his arm. "Shh, don't worry, my baby," she whispered softly. "I'm here." The words pierced through Kwame like a blade. My baby. By the 6th day, his suspicion had hardened into determination. He wanted the truth. And the truth was coming. Exactly 1 week later, Kwame's phone buzzed in the middle of the night. It was Dr. Okoro. "Sir," the doctor said softly, "the DNA results are ready. I'm emailing them now." Kwame's chest tightened as he refreshed his inbox. An email appeared. Subject line: Confidential. DNA test results. He didn't open it. Not yet. Not tonight. Because deep down, some truths you're never ready for. The email sat unopened on the laptop screen. Kwame Mensah leaned back in his leather chair, his breath shallow, the silent hum of the penthouse wrapping around him like a noose. Outside, Ekanal City sparkled against the midnight sky, but his study felt cold, hollow, heavy. For days, the thought had gnawed at him, clawing at the edges of his sanity. What if Kobby isn't mine? He glanced across the dimly lit study at a framed picture on his desk, Kobby's first birthday. His late wife, Amma, stood beside him, smiling softly, holding their little boy. Or was he? Kwame closed his eyes, his fingers trembling as they hovered above the trackpad. He couldn't open it. Not yet. From the doorway, a soft voice interrupted his spiraling thoughts. "Sir." He turned sharply. Ella Boss stood at the door, holding a tray with a steaming cup of ginger tea. Her expression was neutral, almost too neutral, but Kwame didn't miss the flicker of worry in her eyes. "You're awake late," she said softly, setting the tray on the table. Kwame's gaze remained fixed on her, searching her face. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ella blinked, confused. "Tell you what, sir?" He gestured vaguely, his voice low and sharp. "About Kobby's sleepwalking. About him calling Kojo's name every night. About everything." For a moment, Ella froze, her knuckles tightening around the tray. Then she spoke, her tone measured. "I didn't think it mattered to you." The words struck harder than he expected. Kwame looked away, throat tight. Ella hesitated, then added gently, Kobby, he doesn't need more confusion. He just needs to feel safe. Safe. The word lingered in the air, heavy and unspoken. Over the next few nights, the penthouse walls seemed to close in. Kobby's sleepwalking grew worse. Twice, Kwame woke to find him wandering dangerously close to the stairs. Each time, Ella was already there, guiding him carefully, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, whispering soft lullabies. Kwame watched her one night, hidden in the shadows, as she tucked Kobby back into bed and sat quietly beside him, stroking his hair. Then she whispered it, so softly he almost missed it. Don't worry, my baby. I'll never leave you. His chest tightened. My baby. The words spiraled in his head like poison. By Thursday evening, the weight became unbearable. Kwame locked himself in the study, laptop open, the email glowing like a warning. His hands shook as he clicked it. The PDF opened. DNA test results. His eyes scanned the words once, twice, a third time, and then everything inside him stilled. His breath caught in his throat. His fingers went numb. The paper slid from his hands onto the desk. This can't be true, he whispered, voice cracking. The study door creaked open behind him. Sir. Kwame turned sharply. Ella stood there, her expression unreadable, though her eyes darted briefly to the document on the desk. You've been hiding something, Kwame said, his voice low, controlled, dangerous. Ella's lips parted, but no words came. She swallowed hard, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Who is Kojo? He asked quietly. For the first time, Ella's mask slipped. Her eyes glistened as she whispered, barely audible. You're not ready for that answer. Before Kwame could respond, 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the penthouse. Knock, knock, knock. The sound carried through the silence, deep and heavy. Kwame glanced at Ella, who stood frozen, pale as marble. Another knock. He moved toward the door cautiously, his bare feet soft against the marble floor. The knocking stopped as he reached for the handle. He hesitated, breath held, then opened the door. Standing there was a tall, well-dressed man, early 30s, his presence commanding yet cold. A faint scar cut across his jaw, his sharp eyes locking on Kwame's without flinching. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then the man said, calmly, deliberately, We need to talk.